Let's go ahead and move on to Richard in New
Yeah.
York.
Well, you said that, so now everybody's going to pick him. So
Yeah,
hey,
probably.
Richard.
Hey there. I just want to say it's a genuine pleasure to speak to you both. I've been a follower of you guys for years, over a decade now, and I'm also a huge fan of Seth Andrews from the Thinking Atheist. I've been raised in Brooklyn my entire life, coming from a long line of Reformed Jews. So, all the discourse that I've seen online and also, in real life events have been, at least in America, the focus has been on Christianity and Islam, which I don't know. I see that as just being a result of, Judaism being a pretty small religion in terms of followers. I think Jews make up 0.2% of most theists. I believe I got the number wrong, but you can just let me know. I've been an atheist my entire life, and it's just been very difficult for me to find a community of Jewish atheists, because I feel like a lot of people have this impression that if you're Jewish, you can't be an atheist, and if you're an atheist, you can't be Jewish. But
Sure.
I don't know. How do you personally see the status of Jewishness as like an identity that isn't necessarily tied to a religion? And what does that mean for somebody who is atheist and Jewish at the same time? Are those two things compatible, and why?
This is a good question. Jim, do you want to take it, or initially? I have some thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think Judaism and Islam both have two things in common, and that is they are as much a culture as they are a religion, right? Because they come from a particular place and time, etc. The Jewish people, even the ones in Europe, that migrated into Europe, were heavily persecuted and developed their own culture. And so, yeah, I think, you can have both. I think part of the problem is that people have a hard time separating that. They don't actually think about that, right?
Yeah.
Very few, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, because I've met some.
So,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, you go ahead, Richard.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So, like, for example, I'm currently taking a course on Jewish ethics based on, the writings of Talmud. And as an atheist, I see a lot of things that I'm reading as abhorrent to, basic ideals of humanism, respecting one another as equals, particularly Jews and Gentiles. I think their relationship in particular, at least in Orthodox Jewish discourse, is quite destructive to, I guess, a pluralism of different ideas that I uphold as a humanist, Well, I don't take, a really militant stance that religion is in and of itself poisonous or detrimental to society. I also don't take the stance that I think the philosopher Alain de Botton takes, that atheists can and should take things from religion to be better people and inform their ethics. I think there's a good middle ground to what we as atheists can do to be good, moral people. I'm not saying that we can't be without religion. I'm saying, whose ideas do we take to practice in order to be decent people for everyone, regardless of religious identity or lack thereof.
Well, I kind of wonder about that part though, a little bit though, because like we don't really have any data set of like history being built on the shoulders of like naturalists and or atheist non-naturalists, really, right? It's been pretty dominated religiously, and so it's really hard to tell. I feel like, and look, I'm very like, my history extends to like stuff I care about, like first century Palestine, right? But it's not very extensive in any way, so total conjecture here. But it seems that like it's almost like we have no way in order to really tell that. I have my own intuition and speculation that had we flipped the we reversed kind of the results, and we were standing on the shoulders of not really like kind of this religious progression into like an enlightenment period, but kind of like an enlightenment period almost at the beginning. I struggled to see that oh man, like everybody would be like, there's something missing. We needed this period of like religious thinking in order for us to be good moral people. Like I get that in the context of how we've progressed and we don't have any other way of like really looking at the past because that's the cards we're dealt with. And I get that, but I really struggle on that framework to think that. I think we would be like leaps and bounds. I mean, I really like certain sci-fi shows, and I'm inclined to think we'd be closer to those to those types of aesthetics in tech, but and even morals or like even getting along. So, but I don't know what you think about that. I just think we don't really have any data set for us to really make that assumption. I get how people are looking at it today, but it's so skewed, you know?
Yeah. I think this was a while ago where I think one of you had a discussion, and I think the caller had a question. Have you known of any societies that were atheistic in principle or had no conception of a deity? And I think one of you mentioned the Pirahã. So, coming from somebody that studied linguistics, I know for a fact, the Pirahã aren't exactly the most representative culture of, what is typically seen in the world. As far as, so my understanding is that, at least from a cultural perspective, ancient thinkers and just people who had no better ideas of how the world worked, and they had these fears about, what happens after death, or how we should be good people, or who is the in-group, who is the out-group. A lot of these people developed religions and these conceptions of God or the divine to not only, in a way, build a society from scratch based on, justifications for things that they believed and things they were afraid of as a way of comforting themselves, but also separating themselves from whoever was seen as like the barbarian or the other. The same thing was seen in Judaism with the Amalekites, and a lot of ultra-Orthodox Jews, for example, still believe that different groups throughout history have been Amalekites, and some people have said that atheists and agnostics are the Amalekites, and that they should be entirely wiped out. So
yeah, and that's the worry, Richard, right? Is that like there's like, you can think of like Jainism, an extreme like version of Jainism where you're just like desperately not trying to step on ants, But like aside from that, what propositions that are housed within these theologies could you take to its extent where you have something leading to that, where we would all look at that Jain who's like afraid they're going to step on, this like microscopic organism or something and kill it. We would look at that and be like, wow, I mean, that's an insane life to live in a sense, but like mad respect for how much you care about things. Like it's great, but you don't see that housed, right? You take the propositions that these other views have, Abrahamic faiths or not. And I mean, I don't know. I don't really know too much about Hinduism and stuff like that. So, maybe with a grain of salt here, but a lot of them, especially in what impacts our society, our legislation, lobbyists, whatever, right? It's something that when you take that to its extreme, it's like it's running the fuck away from that extreme version of like Jainism, right? It's running the complete fucking opposite way. And so when I see that in comparison, I really just struggle to see any inherent values here, because I just see this as like, oh wow, congrats, like you finally learned some decorum, and like you've learned how to like care about other people at some point when the societal pressure got hot enough and you had to, or whether you keep your tax exempt status or whatever, right? And I don't know, man, I think a lot of that's kind of, it's hard to tell, but I have this inclination that I think it's not valuable. It might be valuable for a utility perspective for people, but I've been an atheist
Right.
like my whole
Right.
life, other than some
Yeah,
spiritual
me
kind of
too.
stint, and I've never struggled with this like what's the purpose and all that stuff has just always been foreign to me, right? So I don't know. I think that if
I
peop
understand. Yeah.
I have an insight to that, I
Yeah.
know a lot of people were former Christians, and so I wonder, like, I'm sitting there on the other side going, like, guys, it's really not that it's not that weird to grow up like never really thinking about God and stuff like that. It's a common thing that a lot of people have, And I think that all those people are pretty
Yeah.
good
Yeah. Like
people
I've
involved in
never.
that.
Yeah. 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 I've never had a period where I deconverted from Judaism. I was just always a non-believer. So it's not that I don't feel sympathy for anyone that used to believe and then later had doubts and then just saw the bullshit of just religion in general and wanting to understanding from a greater scientific perspective or even just a moral one, believing that women shouldn't in fact be subservient to the husband or, the whole idea of kosher food is
Sure.
asinine, or the evils of circumcision and it's seeking away from the agency of a little baby, that kind of thing. But as someone who never had a period of even being a believer, I've always felt like an outsider in the Jewish community. So really considering the value of religion in general, I guess only as far as much as religion overlaps with cultural overall. So a shared identity where you're able to come together as one community and share ideas.
I get that. The problem is it makes
But,
it
yeah.
makes no prejudice to the ideas. Like it's really just the structure, I feel like. And then you
Right.
can just input whatever content you want. And then once it gets to something where like, well, that's atrocious. It's like, well, but it's a culture and it's this thing and we have to respect it. It's like, no. I don't fucking just respect beliefs. Like I just don't. Like I respect you as a
Sure.
person and the
Yeah.
value I think that we can give each other and that you have to your mother or your father. Like I 100% get all that, but like I'm sorry, you have a belief that I think is like fucking ridiculous. Like, I'm just gonna, call it out. And if you take that as something as being like culturally insensitive or something, it's like, well, no, I'm just like, I'm attacking the belief, the proposition. And who's to say you can't just
Yeah.
discard the proposition and keep, these values? I mean, that's what I guess progressive movements really are. But Jim, I don't know.
No,
I
I
don't know what
agree.
you want to
Yeah.
add
I
something,
agree.
Jim, but I know that Richard's main concern was talking about the community and where to find that. My only
Yeah.
addition there is like I've met some people on TikTok that have a similar kind of position, but I don't know if that's a community. It's just some people
Yeah.
you can talk to,
Yeah. We have you. Where in New York are you from, Richard?
I'm in Brooklyn, so really the center of American Jewry, I guess. I live
Right.
actually not too far from where the tunnel fiasco happened.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Brooklyn's fine.
but,
I just wanted to make sure you're near a major population center. So if I were you, I would go looking at meetup.com. I'd look at Facebook groups and events.
Sure.
Especially in your area. Like you said, there's a lot of Jewish folks.
Yeah.
I remember reading somewhere that after World War II in the concentration camps, there were a lot of Jewish atheists running around. So it may just be a matter of finding them, and I think social media is a great way to do that. JMike mentioned, TikTok. We've got the Atheist Community of Discord. There's the Facebook groups that JMike here will talk about here in just a minute that we have. And so I think that social media is a place to start. And if you find out that there really isn't a community or the community that you want, you can't be the only person who feels this way. So start your own group. It's easy to start a Facebook group, and and if you want it to be local and have people meet up together, then give it a local name. Like throw Brooklyn in there. or however you wanted to do it. I mean, it's entirely up to you. But if I were you, that's what I would do. Is I would start looking for people on social media, groups on social media, and if I didn't find them, I'd probably try to create them. And I think that's really the only thing that you can do. And fortunately, we live in 2024, where finding like-minded people is easy, even if they're across the world. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great first step, something I had considered. I've just been an atheist on my own, basically.
Right.
Just watching your guys' videos, reading, Dawkins and Harris, but really not finding anyone who had my understanding of what it meant to be a Jew and an atheist at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's something I'll just have to create on my own if that doesn't exist online.
There's someone I met recently online. She does some lives with I think she's I don't know what her background is. I know she's Jewish. I don't know if she kind of takes a similar position as like a Jewish atheist or whatever, but she'll always kind of be on the panel talking with like on the side with atheists, kind of having this debate, with Christians. And so I always get the impression, but man, I would love if somehow we all kind of met up on the platform and talked. I would love that, because I think you'd be drawn to that. It'd be very close to home, right? Maybe is what I'm thinking, right? I don't know. So I'm not Jewish, so I'm kind of reaching in here and but I mean, I feel like if you check out these communities and stuff like that's to me like helped me a lot in terms of like once I started doing, I don't want to say content, but having conversations and debates, like I was like, okay, yeah, this is like this is like my people, even the people that disagree with me, in terms of like we're all here to discuss these ideas, and that interests me. And then over time it builds a community, start to know these people pretty well, and so I think that's something to look into.
Yeah, and some keywords. There are some code words you can look for too. Anything if you see skeptic, free thinker, Oasis. Those are three keywords that are Oasis less than the other two, because it usually refers to a specific group known as I think the Oasis for Atheists or something anyway. But if you also look for those three keywords, you'll also find some like-minded, or get started finding some like-minded folks. And then Armin was just texting me and saying that Atheist Republic groups exist in Israel. And so Atheist Republic might be another organization to go look for, especially if they're in Israel. So those might be some things to go look for. Humanist Society and Humanism is another keyword. Our Humanism Society in particular is another group, and humanist would also be another keyword.
Yeah, that's great. So I'll definitely see what I can find. I guess my main concern was, finding like-minded people that weren't Christian, not to knock the wealth of information out there about atheism from the perspective of ex-Christians, but Jews in general have a very different conception of their culture and what it means to them, as far as their upbringing, their history, their unique identities. So that's really what I'm looking for. But I'll see what I can find. Thank you so much for your help.
Well, if you were paying attention to chat on the show, you just saw Jimmy Jr.'s super chat, some suggestions, and we'll read those out here in a second. I don't want to steal all the thunder, but the chat over there on the side next to the video is a good place to get started too. You'd be surprised at what if you just ask the question, you might get more answers than you can handle.
Definitely. I'm on the phone, so I can't see the chat, but I'll definitely look back.
Sure.
Yeah. But thank you so much for help. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the call, Richard.